For anyone who denies human beings evolved from apes, the level of anti-Semitism on display around the world immediately after the Hamas terrorist attacks in Israel on October 7th of this year proves we not only evolved from apes, but there's still many among us dragging their knuckles on the ground. And it's a shame to see it coming from many people who don't realize their own religions are basically rip-offs of Judaism to begin with. And that's the biggest problem about all religions. Not only are they all false, but they amplify our most violently tribal and territorial impulses. And it doesn't matter how much a religion like Islam claims it's about peace, actions speak louder than words. There are not many other religions that encourage its followers to become suicide bombers, and much less that prescribe death to anyone who leaves their faith. But I have yet to read about any Jewish suicide bombers. If there are any, please let me know in the comments below. And this video isn't about picking on Muslims or Christians, though these two religions in particular produce the greatest amount of anti-Semites. Ironic considering that both Christianity and Islam are derivative of Judaism. They're practically television spin-offs, the way the Jeffersons and Maude were spin-offs of All in the Family. But unlike comedic television spin-offs, there's nothing funny about the number of genocides and ethnic cleansing some Christians and Muslims have engaged in trying to wipe out Jewish people. The saddest part about it is, Jewish people aren't going around trying to convert others to their faith. Most Jewish people prefer to just be left alone. And more interestingly, many Jewish people actually become secular or even atheist. While all religions are false when it comes to their principal beliefs their followers must believe in order to claim they are part of that particular faith, there is something about Judaism that produces a lot of smarter than average people. Judaism has produced almost 25% of the world's Nobel Prize winners, particularly when it comes to the category of science alone. Granted, the Nobel Prize can be quite subjective when you consider Barack Obama won the Nobel Prize for Peace in 2009 and went on to order over 20,000 bombings in 7 countries. However, there's nothing subjective about the intelligence required to comprehend reality and the math behind it. After all, numbers never lie, unlike career politicians. And there's something to Judaism that just leads to many more intelligent people. And one in particular whose name is synonymous not only with intelligence, but genius, Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein, one of humanity's greatest thinkers, who managed to discover how gravity actually works, and that energy and matter are interchangeable. He could have been a victim of one of the worst chapters of anti-Semitism in history, the Holocaust. It's beyond ironic that one of the most intelligent human beings lived not only during the same time as one of the most evil human beings in history, but they grew up less than 200 miles apart with only a 10-year difference. Fortunately, by the time Albert Einstein discovered the theory of special relativity and general relativity, not to mention figuring out how light is made of photons, Hitler was far from being in power. But had Einstein not left Germany in 1932, he could have ended up like many of the millions of other Jewish people, needlessly suffering and dying at the hands of incredibly stupid, selfish, envious people, the Nazis. People who could have learned from the Jews, since after all their predominantly bullshit religion, Christianity, which I also grew up under, was really just a second-rate ripoff of Judaism. But no, the German Nazis did not learn from the Jewish people. They did not harness their intelligence. They did not leverage the amount of knowledge and wisdom Jewish people had to offer. How many other potential Einsteins died during the Holocaust? How much more science could we as a species have benefited from? After all, Jewish people hardly pose a threat to Christians and Muslims when it comes to the sheer number of them. There are only 16 million Jewish people on the entire planet, while there are literally over 1 billion Christians and another billion Muslims. It's hard to even believe that there's only 16 million Jewish people. They make up just 0.2% of the world's 8 billion population. And yet the pure envy in the form of inexcusable hatred for Jewish people seems to continue. And not just throughout the Middle East, but everywhere. It's as shameful as it is infuriating to witness the amount of anti-Semitism in the United States alone since the October 7 massacre by Hamas. Granted, is the Israeli Defense Forces doing everything it can to minimize the loss of truly innocent Palestinian lives? We can only hope so, but then again, it's a well-known fact that Hamas has precisely used Palestinians, particularly children, as human shields, and more importantly, sympathy propaganda to deflect blame from the pure evil Hamas knows they're engaged in. There's more than enough information and footage covering the history of Israel, the unfortunate deception that some Israeli government officials engaged in at times when it came to Israeli settlements, by people who are clearly more expert at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict than I can ever be. However, it's worth noting to be very careful where you get anti-Israeli information from, namely if it's from Al Jazeera, which is owned by the Qatari government, which is essentially a dictatorship that all too many pro-Palestinian sympathizers are clueless to. See if there's any news footage on Al Jazeera about the human rights abuses committed by the Qatari government. But you don't need to be a historian or a media expert in this ongoing conflict to see how Palestinians are not only being used as human shields, but as political pawns by Middle Eastern autocrats, theocrats, and even monarchies that have proven to have no feeling of supposed Muslim brotherhood for their own people. The fact that the Iranian regime killed over 500 Iranians last year over the rightful protests of Mahsa Amini, who was killed for not wearing a proper headscarf, speaks volumes of how Islam itself is used as a weapon for societal control of Muslim nations. I know I won't be winning any Nobel Prizes in the social sciences for my following hypothesis, but I am willing to bet Islam as a religion, and simply as an ideology, has stunted the evolution of millions of people throughout the Middle East. And this all stems from subtly brainwashing prayer rituals 5 times a day, on your knees, facing Mecca no less, by Islam's originator, the Prophet Muhammad, who was definitely known for being a warlord and most likely an egocentric psychopath hell-bent on power and dominion over others. And since he was not accepted as the long-awaited Messiah by the Jews, nor seen as the second coming of Christ by Christians, is the reason why he waged war on Jews and Christians and anyone else who would not accept him as the ultimate prophet and ruler he expected others to see himself as. And it's why to this day, some Muslims, particularly extremists and jihadists, have been indoctrinated to believe the world needs to be under Allah in order to have peace. In other words, the world needs to be under Islam. In other words, Muhammad's psychotic delusion for global domination. And that's the most tragic flaw about our species. The overwhelming amount of people who cannot think for themselves, that have to always go with the flow of their in-group, whose tribal and territorial violent impulses can be so easily triggered by other modern-day power-hungry tyrants. This is the ape-like behavior of our species, very similar to watching chimpanzees tearing at each other over mere food and a little more territory as they keep swinging from the trees. This is how we know not everyone has evolved past our apish ancestry just yet. And anti-Semitism is the most glaring example of this, almost 4,000 years since the beginning of Judaism, which predates Christianity by almost 2,000 years, and Islam by an additional 600 years. This is also how Hamas has terrorized the Palestinian people ever since they got elected into power and never held an election since. How Israel has not at all occupied the Gaza Strip since Prime Minister Ariel Sharon ordered every Jewish person to leave the area in 2005. And now we have people behaving just as ape-like over an issue they think they understand because it's the latest politically chic cause to rally behind. People openly calling for the deaths of Jewish people. Again, just like in 1930s Germany, right before the Holocaust. What's so frustrating about witnessing all of this is that every problem has a solution, but power-hungry, sadistic tyrants get in the way. And it's easy for them to do it when too many people have yet to fully evolve and see how they're being used by them. If I got anything wrong in this video, please let me know in the comments below. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for upcoming videos, and check out the links below for my original art and merchandise. And thanks for watching.